Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. We're making a quick recording here to offer at Sunday school. That's the primary use for what we're going on, or what we've got going on here. Michael Ware, I've got my dad with me, Mick Ware. You want me to introduce you, Dad, or you want to hop right in?
Okay. I'm Michael's dad.
Easy enough. What the premise of bringing you on today, Dad, so that I can play this for my church family here at Cornerstone, is so that we could offer a little context on the Magi and the route and how that they would have gotten from wherever it is they came from, which is some rumors and some historical myth and lore, but we do know they came from the East. And it's widely understood or accepted that they came from Persia, which is modern day Iran. And so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on to help walk through this with everybody, to gain some perspective or some context, is because you spent 2 years in Iran in the Peace Corps and solid. It's not quite like it is today. When Dad was there, you went over and you stayed for 700 and some days, and then a courier package showed up with all your tickets and you left. So there wasn't any coming home for Christmas when Dad was over there. So and then if I understand right, you were what, Asadabad or near it?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the wise men is rumored to have been from Save, which is not that far. So I thought that it'd be nice to bring you on and to walk through a map that I'm going to share up on the screen, and we'll kind of walk through what it would have been like, because we know, let me see if I'll get that pulled up here. The account basically in Matthew 2, which I can read, has a good description of the visit of the Magi, and I can do that real quick. So so everybody gets their place in the Bibles. We're in Matthew 2, and we'll start at the beginning there. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." And when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all the Jerusalem with him. And gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what has been written by the prophet." And this goes on to 2:6. "And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for from you will come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel." So that's the prophecy. So then we move forward to Matthew 2:7. "Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, report to me, so that I too may come and worship him.'" So this is Herod speaking to the Magi, to the three wise men, right? And so he's trying to ascertain how long it took them to get there, from where they started to where they are now, which will give Herod an idea how old this child is, so he can seek him out. And so after hearing the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went on ahead of them until it came to stop over the place where the child was to be found. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And after they came into the house, that's important, by the way, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And after being warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. So they went back, didn't go back the same way they came. And it's in the word house here. If you seek this out in Hebrew, I talked with Travis about this as well. This manger scene that we have, this idea, and this three Magi hanging around, they weren't there when he was born. This happened months, maybe even years later. There are people that I have read online and scholars that are claiming the quickest they believe that this journey could have been taken was somewhere between 7 and 9 months, and it could have been double that length. So, and then you move forward in Matthew 2. Now we'll start at 13. "Now when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him.' So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and it was still night, and left for Egypt. So they packed up in the middle of the night and off they went. he stayed until the death of Herod. This happened so that what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet will be fulfilled. Out of Egypt I called my son. And then you move forward, and when they saw in 2:16, then when Herod saw that they had been tricked by the Magi, he came very enraged and sent men and killed all the boys of Bethlehem and all its vicinity who were 2 years old and under. So this gives us the idea that it was a journey of 2 years or less. And we pull that straight out of the beginning of Matthew. So let me share on the screen, Dad, and then we'll start over here. Maybe give us a little bit of your background in Asadabad, and then we'll move over to Save, just east of there, to get an idea what we have going on. And then we'll do just like you and I did off screen and see if we can kind of zoom out and chart a bit of a path. And then I can turn the roads overlay on and off to give people an idea of what the terrain was like, and we'll go through that. So let me hit the share screen button. Is it working?
Oh, there.
How about now?
It worked.
Okay, so here's Iran. Iraq is right here in the middle, and you've got Syria and Jordan down here below. And then you move over to along the coast, and there's Israel. So, and up north and through here is Turkey. These are all very important things to understand. The geography matters. So if I pull out my little ruler here and click on miles, you can see from Save, where one of these wise men was rumored to be from, to Bethlehem, as a crow flies, is about 921 miles. Now, if you get an idea what it would be like to walk and to ride on a camel, which was walking, not running, mind you, 921 miles is a heck of a long way to go. But this is a straight line. And for everybody's benefit, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit and give you an idea of what it would have been like. First of all, you couldn't have gone straight through, because you can imagine it's just like today anywhere else. A straight line won't get you there. And if you did try a straight line, look at what you had to look forward to. I mean, this is literally desert. There's nothing out there. There's no sustenance. So you're going to have to go other ways, and I will clear out of that, and then we'll move over here into Iran to give you an idea. So let's do what we talked about first. I'm going to get rid of the roads so they don't clutter the map up. And we'll pull into Asadabad, where you spent 2 years. So give us the skinny, Dad, what the things look like here and why.
Well, I probably should talk about means of transportation. You said a straight line. An airplane could fly from Save to Bethlehem in less than 2.5 hours. I plotted what I would consider the most likely route, and it was like 1,500 miles or more. And you would have to travel in those times by probably camel and donkey. Donkeys are native to the desert areas. We don't realize that, but donkeys actually survive much better in the desert than they do in the cold mountains and so on. Camels the same way. Camels are the dairy herd, if you will, of the Middle East. They're the only dairy animal you can stand and milk. Guys, the herder is standing on one side milking, and the calf's on the other side sucking, and the camel just stands there. They don't have to tie him up or anything. There they are. Milk doesn't curdle. It's actually has more vitamin C, and it has, for diabetics, it has a lot of insulin, because one of the things that camels, they don't eat grass like cows particularly. They eat leaves off of trees and bushes and stuff, and a lot of the bushes they eat have medicinal value, and that gets into the milk. And so now you've got an animal that provides milk, transportation, meat if necessary. The donkey's the same way. I better back up. The camels can, a single hump camel can carry 900 pounds or a little better. A donkey, although they can, 150 pounds is their top load. They can pull carts. But they are also guard animals. They use them for herding. They herd animals as well as kids, and they provide transportation. one donkey can hear another for 60 miles, if you can imagine the sensitivity of their hearing. So there's your transportation. I doubt very seriously if horses were involved, because a lot of this area horses wouldn't be they'd be more of a liability than they would be an asset. So you have these animals that are accustomed to arid and deserts and shortage of water and food that you depend on entirely for your safe passage and your success in traveling.
Sure.
Now then, you have to pick a route in which you can feed those animals, considering there's no gas stations or any place to fill up. And so the routes you take have got to have some sort of vegetation and water, water for yourselves, but vegetation for your animals, because there's a limited amount of food that you can take with you. And I guess we'll discuss on how they restock supplies, if you will. Culturally, it's all in relationships. And if you go out, this entourage, if there were three magi, and they probably weren't kings, more they were learned people, because in the area were a lot of Jewish descent from being prisoners of the Persians, and so the Jews had informed them of the coming Messiah. And so when this symbol came, they appreciated it, and they responded to it. Now then, so they're going to strike off, knowing it's a really long trip. They probably included their family and wives and kids. They also included people who could herd the animals, take care of the animals, if the animals were injured or whatever. They would also have people who would provide protection, in other words, sort of guards.
Sure.
Because on your own, everybody's out there and you carry everything you've got. And it's typical and traditional to bring gifts along with you that you would bestow upon your host as you came upon them. And so people robbers and so on, would know that there's a treasure trove of values here if they could overcome these parties. So if we're looking at 75 or 100 people in a group, it takes a long time. Everybody, you have to accommodate the slowest part of your group. As you progress along a probably known route, someone would ride ahead, maybe a couple of guys would ride ahead to the next village, and they would inform the chief or mayor, if you will, who was coming. And so when your three magi's came, the mayor or the chief would have had time to prepare for them. They would dismount, they would be introduced, go to his house, they would sit and have tea and food and get acquainted. And they would probably be issued an invitation to stay for maybe a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Person. And so now then we're resting, and the herders are gathering up hay and supplies and stuff to go farther. And this is all taking place. The women are pitching the tents and making temporary homes for the next 2 weeks. And this goes on and on and on. Each time that you come to a village, this is the custom. And so you can see how long it might take, while if you had a steady path, it wouldn't take so long. But because of customs and culture, you had to do these things in order to be good stewards and guests as well.
Well, I've been clicking on a few of these pictures as you've been explaining some of this makeup of the entourage and what it would have been like, so that people can get an idea today anyway, what some of these areas look like. And they're very beautiful, but you can just see that there is water, there is greenery, there is vegetation, and then there are mountains that just pop right up, and they're not something that you can just go over. I mean, you have to weave through them. There are no straight routes. I mean, so that even when you look from above on this Google Earth Pro that I'm using, it doesn't really help you get an idea of really how mountainous some of this stuff is. I mean, even till when you zoom down in there, it's really unbelievable. And as you can see, some of these places are wild and woolly. So, and the snow, I don't think people think of the Middle East as if it's this big arid desert. And there's nothing there. Well, there are portions that are like that, but they have seasons too. And so this is another reason it took so long, which is part of the reason that it segues nicely into the idea of the Christ's birthday or birth date in late December. Well, that's largely understood to be hogwash, because you've got accounts of shepherds with their flocks grazing. Well, it wouldn't have been like that. I mean, look at these pictures and look at some. I mean, you'd had snow. They wouldn't have been out foraging in those places in that areas at that time of year. So we're all pretty sure that December 25th being aligned with a pagan holiday for buy-in back in the European era and time was kind of when that date was set. So most people that I visit with, most things that I can find online, most references that I can gather are anywhere between April and September. So when he would have been born. So I think that's kind of interesting, but I'll zoom out here now. So I've put these little let me get rid of the roads. They cluttered up a little bit. So Asadabad is where you were there for 2 years. And so if you go, let me use my little ruler again. If you go,
you're right there, Michael.
Yep.
Let me point out that between Save and Asadabad are the Zagros Mountains, and the only path from Save would be through what in the Bible is called Ekbatana. It's now called Hamadan. But the passage over the mountain, we were cautioned that sometimes in the wintertime, the mountain passes would be plugged with snow for weeks, maybe months at a time, and food would be short in our areas, and we'd have to be very careful because people would want to steal food for their children and so on.
Right.
So it was the route had to have been a more temperate time, as you say, when they actually came across those mountains, and I'm sure there are other areas the same way.
If you look in the middle of the screen here, you can see this curvature of all these roads down here, and it kind of gives you a better picture for this being a mountainous pass around here, and you had to go this way to get to Hamadan. So when you zoom in, you kind of start to get an idea. You had to come up and around and down through, because these other areas that I passed my little wand over, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, it says elevation 6,577 feet. These are mountain peaks, and these are tops, and you couldn't go over them. So you'd have to go down along this route here as your way in and out. And this is Hamadan, which is between where you were and Save. So what am I doing here? I don't want to do that.
Well, you can see how you come up and around those mountain peaks.
Yeah. And let me see if there are some pictures to illustrate that. Well, that's not going to work. Yeah, I mean, these things just crop up out of nowhere, and they're just poking up there. And you got to traverse them. You got to go through them, around them, whatever else. So
that might have been Mount Damavand, which was really high.
Yeah.
There you go. There's mountains and snow, and yeah, I can't see what it is actually, but pretty desolate, really.
Yeah, it's very pretty. I will give it that. But as you can see, I mean, not a lot to eat this time of year up there on the high elevation and what all's going on there. And so it was, we're talking about hardships and better planning. So if you move back, if we zoom out here a little bit, and then we recognize that Baghdad is right down here, which would have still been a major population center. I'm like you, Dad. I think it stands to reason that it's likely that they would have come this way and then or cross the mountains through one of these passes, depending on the time of year, or they'd have to wait for it. And then when you get to Baghdad, you'd kind of have two choices, a fork in the road, so to speak. So you could go to the northern route or the northwestern route. And I'm like you, it would make sense to follow the Euphrates, which is this river right here, because that would give you sustenance and some people along the way, and get way up here through Syria, because you still couldn't cross the desert. You have to go way up here and then come down along the coast. Probably, I don't mean right on the coast, but I mean along this edge. So if you start looking at what this is like, you just have the Euphrates River, And let me get down here and see if I can find some pictures that help show some vegetation and what it would have looked like. See, there you go. A little sparse here and there.
There's not a lot of vegetation even along the river. It's
Right.
pretty sparse, yeah. Yeah, you see that? There's a for one thing, they cut the trees down and use them for construction.
Yep.
They have mud huts and they use those for support across the top to hold branches and leaves, and then ultimately mud to make a roof. And so trees are you have to guard your tree and forest pretty carefully because somebody will be cutting it down and utilizing it.
Yeah, it's a precious commodity. I can see that. Okay, so probably it stands to reason it would be likely that they'd head up the Euphrates or something like that, one way or the other through here. And then again, as you move up, it looks like there's a little bit more greenery in this area, a few little spots here and there. There's some pretty stuff. Anyway, making the trek northwest. Now we're well into Syria. Let me get rid of the roads here. Click.
That's an Ofta Bay. That thing was a water picture.
Yeah.
Well,
so I don't know whether this is a castle or a military installation or what. It's hard to say, but I don't know. Pretty stuff. Anyway, still continuing north. And this, we talked about this earlier, Dad. I'm not sure. I mean, now we're into Turkey. That's what this yellow line is here for everybody following along. We're not sure if they would have kept going north here a little ways before heading west and back down. But you guys are starting to get an idea.
That'd be Syria, Michael, I think.
No, we're in Syria now.
Okay. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, we're in Syria now. If we go up through the Euphrates and then you cross over here and you'd be into Turkey. So I wouldn't know. Yeah. I mean, you could probably go west here possibly, or continue north a little bit further before you start coming down. But and there was a lot of peril. I mean, when I was reading stories about Paul and the adventures of going through the Mediterranean, every time that they would, if you pop over here and look, once they hit the coast, the first thing that they would do was go inland as quickly as they could. And the reason why is this place was absolutely crawling with pirates way back in that day too. I mean, and they would inhabit the coast and they would murder, rape, and pillage all the way around here. So if it wasn't near a huge population center, when you hit the beach or you hit some sort of port, you needed to move your way inland because all the pirates and the riffraff hang out around here. So I don't know what that would have been like for them to travel down through here, whether they would have been on the water or whether they would have been inland a little bit. But you finally get down here to what is current day Bethlehem. And I'm sure, there's a tremendous amount of population now. Lots and lots of pictures. All kinds of stuff. So is that you, Dad?
What's that?
Is that a picture of you?
No.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Some guy.
Yeah, some guy. Okay. So anyway, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of the culture and the backstory, because the fact of the matter is you're right from what I can read and what I can learn. When we say the word entourage, that doesn't really adequately convey what the heck's going on here. I mean, this is a long trip. It would have taken a long time. I mean, think about what it would have been like to move 50 or 80 people. You'd get up in the morning and you'd pack up all the tents, which was these aren't Coleman pop-up dome tents where you give it a twist and the thing just kind of goes poof. It's not like that. So it takes quite a crew to tear everything down, pack everything up, and get started going. And you wouldn't make it that many miles in a day.
Pretty stout women, Michael.
Right. So I mean, so
women did it all.
Right. Well, according to what was going on at Thessalonica, yeah, they were prepared to do that. Anyway, So what I'm getting at is you figure you can walk a couple miles an hour, and so how far could you possibly make it in a day's time before it's time to stop and set up camp again? You just wouldn't traverse that route very quickly. And then, as you said, you're obligated because you can't really say no. You should tell a story about that, Dad. Maybe everybody would appreciate that. For example, when you were in Iran and you were working with people and they asked you into their home and you showed up, I mean, you couldn't say no. Nah, we got to stay on the road. We got to keep moving. You can't do that.
Yeah, when Mr. Abdi and I, we worked in 10 villages, including Asadabad. We would go to a village and we would set up demonstration plots on agricultural planting, fertilizing, irrigation, and so on. But we always left by 10:30 because that was the sweet spot. After 10:30, they would invite you to stay for lunch, and you had to stay, and because it was their honor to have you, and if you would refuse, it would be insulting. But even though these people didn't have virtually anything, they would go to their neighbors and borrow rice and meat and vegetables and tea or whatever they didn't have, just so they could be the great hosts. And they would have mounds of rice and stuff on a huge platter. If they had a little bit of meat, they always buried the meat in the rice and they would turn the tray to you. You were the guest, and they were honored to have you, and they would do anything and everything to make you feel at home. I was treated the best I've ever been treated anywhere in the world, from the poorest people in the world, probably. We might talk a little bit about we want to validate just a little bit. Everybody's got their ideas. There's all kinds of historical proofs or non-proofs about what was going on. I'm going on Marco Polo was a 17-year-old Venetian or Italian that went with his dad and uncle to China. And he documented his trip. And he's the one that wrote about the Magi at Sauve, however. And he wrote and said, this was in 1270, roughly 13th century. He was shown the three tombs of the Magi at Sauve, south of Tehran in the 1270s. Marco Polo was a Christian merchant from the Venetian Republic. They were going to China and they got gold and jewels and so on. But anyway, he wrote about it, and he said that he saw the city where they're buried, three beautiful monuments with the structure above them, and their bodies were interred there with hair and beard remaining. And so it makes me think that he actually, in fact, did see three bodies. Now, there's people that say one of the Magi came from India, another came from China, and so on, and all kinds of conjecture. But I'm just leaning on the idea that because of the names, especially the last wise man's name is very, very Persian. Balthazar is a Persian name, particularly. So he definitely came from Iran. Now, Caspar and Melchior, maybe not. But anyway, the fact that he wrote about these guys validates the fact that they existed. Maybe not only in lore, but it also in fact in that they did make this trip, and it was amazing to think that they were both real and symbolic, and that they confirmed the ancient prophecies about Jesus being the Messiah, and his symbols. They showed that he came to save all people, rich and poor, schooled and unschooled, and so on. And they point to Jesus Christ, the manifestation of God's love for the human race. And so not much has been recorded about them, but, and like you say, this is conjecture on my part, but having lived in the areas where things haven't changed much over the last 2,000 years, gave me a pretty good insight on how things would have been conducted and what they would have done, and so on. So, well, Merry Christmas to you, Michael.
You too. I appreciate everybody taking a few minutes here during class and running along with us. So, Dad, thank you for sharing your knowledge of the area and the culture and that kind of stuff. And it's an interesting story. I suppose all we can really rely on is what's in the good book. No more, no less. But it's interesting to kind of look through and get an idea of what it might have been like and to try and piece it together, at least in loose form, so that we can have a little bit of context about this journey and what's true of a thing, what's not. So I appreciate you giving me some time tonight, Dad. I'm going to record this and then I'll play it as part of my lesson on Sunday morning. Any
Michael, thank you.
any parting thoughts, Dad, or did we cover it?
No, we covered. Oh, we could go on for hours if you want. But it's
Well, I
an
was
amazing trip. It's an amazing philosophy. It's an amazing thing that was set in motion, and it validates the birth of Jesus Christ. And it, like you say, these were learned men. Actually, Sauvé had been one of the had the largest library in this whole Middle East for years and years until the Mongols came and destroyed it. So these people really studied, and they also learned from the Jewish population around them. They themselves were probably Zoroastrian, which would explain, but they were converted when they to Christianity when they made their trip. They saw the wonders of Jesus Christ, and it's a good lesson for us all.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, that's what I needed, Dad. Appreciate it. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.